Hello, I'm Michael Pooler, Brazil correspondent at the Financial Times. I'm joined today by Bruno Garfinkel, who is chairman of the board at Porto Seguro, Brazil's third largest insurance company. Today, we're talking about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the economy and how companies are adapting to this. So, Mr. Garfinkel, thanks for joining us. First of all, a lot of people who don't work in the insurance industry won't know a great deal about the sector and how it operates. So what would you say has been the single biggest impact on your sector here in Brazil since the pandemic began?
Well, Michael, we operate in different lines of insurance, where our major line is motor insurance, meaning automobiles. But we also operate in life and health insurance, home insurance, and we have different consequences of the pandemic in each line of business. So, for instance, in motor insurance, we have seen through the lockdowns a reduction on traffic jams and overall movement of cars in the major cities and highways. So this has come to the result of a reduction in the claims ratio, which is something very good for the motor insurance industry. Of course, there's also have been a reduction on sales. Some people have postponed the acquisition of a car since they're not moving around. But one thing through the other, we still have seen something positive on the motor insurance line. More these days, traffic has picked up, things getting back to normality, and the price of the insurance has gone down because it's taking into the actuarial effects that impact pricing. So in the future, of course, this might bring claims up, but it's okay because we're in the game of playing all the time. So as long as we're still over there and writing policies and paying our claims, we manage the waves one after the other. So no problem. In life insurance, I think in Brazil, the insurance market did something very interesting pro-consumer. Every single company within the country has decided to go forward and give coverage through the pandemic, which is something that on the contract in general was not something that we needed to do. So we paid out the claims for life insurance during the pandemic, also health insurance, and of course this has brought some pressure on results, and this might go on if there is a third wave. So the results were not very good, but I think the institution of insurance will come out with greater power, because insurance is something that has a lot to do with trust. And if people don't trust that when the time they most need, the insurance company will be there to help, this is not good for long-term business. So this is something that I think will play out very well in the future. In our home insurance lines, we have seen some rise in claims, but also some rise in sales, because people are more in their houses. So when they're in their houses, most of the time, they start to think about their house, they start to think about what they need in the house, and also the risk they have in their house. So there has been some positive movements on the home insurance sector. So overall, we didn't see a big drop in sales. We saw some rise in claims, like auto had a reduction. So one thing to the other, it has been a good year for the insurance market in general. And well, we also have some pressure on the financial markets, where the interest rates have gone down to record low in Brazil for the last like 24 months, if you take the average. But still, the positions that we made of investments, they were not short term, and they were tied to inflation. So since the inflation picked up with so much money in the market, we actually ended up having some positive feedback also with investments. So overall, for Porto Seguro, it has been a good ride in the business wise. Terrible in general. We have a big pressure within our employees, with our families, but still, we're trying to do the best we can and keeping everybody safe.
I'm interested about health insurance. Obviously, we've seen throughout the world, hospitals have been really full with people suffering from COVID-19. There's been a lot of pressure on general health services as a result. How has this played through into health insurance? Have you had to pay out a lot more in claims?
Michael, that is something very interesting. Well, you have to think about two different key elements of claims. One is the frequency. So the frequency that people are getting ill. And of course, when you have a virus that's spreading with no control, you have more frequency of people getting ill. But on the other hand, the severity of the disease, when we talk about the money expenditure in this class, is less than what you would expect when you talk about surgery on an elbow, on a knee, on a heart. And if you're so we call these elective surgeries. So people are postponing elective surgeries at this point because no one wants to go to a hospital and be in the risk of getting contaminated by the corona. So we have seen a reduction on the severity of the claims, while we have seen a rise in claims. What does this mean? It means that at least on the first wave until early 2021, we have seen a reduction in overall claims ratio, which is good for our health insurance line. Now, more recently, we have seen something different occur. Since the corona has been spreading to younger people who tend to be more healthy and they stay longer periods of time in intensive care, now the severity is starting to pick up. And now we start to see the claims ratio getting some effects from the corona too. So until now, things were under control. From now on, we start to see some red flags that we have to attend to. But it's business, and we did a good job last year. We had some profits. Now we're going to have to pay out. It's part of the deal. It's okay.
That's very interesting. So the greater occurrence of the disease in young people results in longer hospital stays and therefore more costs. It's almost counterintuitive in a way. But I was interested by the point you said about elective surgery. Well, in the UK, for example, where I'm from, there is a big backlog of people who weren't going to hospital either for elective procedures or for things like scans to see if they had cancer. Do you think there is going to be a big backlog of people who are delaying and postponing procedures? And as a result, will there be a big influx into hospitals and clinics once the virus calms down? And what will that mean for you?
Well, I think that if you're ill, at one point you will be in the hospital, and it's no point in postponing it. So personally, every time I feel ill, I go to the hospital and try to get rid of it as soon as I can. But when we're talking about corporate health insurance, everybody it kind of tends to organize itself in a way that the capacity of the hospitals to take in the demand has not gone up. So still there is some kind of a barrier of a big wave of elective surgeries affecting in a surprising manner the insurance. What I think is we had like a gap of surgeries or electives, and once the COVID starts to get under control, electives tend to come back but in a progressive manner, because still the population is frightened and it takes time for everybody to feel confident enough and to go and undertake a procedure. So we're looking at it slowly. We see some yellow flags, some red flags too, but still, we think that we won't see a big spike that is like not considered.
You mentioned about corporate health plans. Now, we've seen around the world, a lot of companies have had to reduce their costs in order to deal with the fallout and the economic consequences of COVID-19. Have you seen any companies reducing the amount of insurance cover they offer to employees or cutting it entirely?
Well, we have we only operate in corporate insurance for health. And what we see is that we sold more contracts. So more companies are worried about their employees, which is good, but which we feel is like the human side of business. But on the other hand, we've seen some layoffs. So our total life coverage has stayed on the same level. So we didn't see any growth, even though we sold more contracts. But we also didn't see a reduction on life coverage because we also had this thing that one covered the other. Well, but in general, we've seen more companies looking for the basic plans instead of the more complexity and AAA plans.
And you mentioned about this greater frequency of claims on health insurance plans, and also now younger people being hospitalized and spending longer in intensive care. Overall, will the impact be that health insurance premiums become more expensive?
No, I don't think, Michael. Since with the electives play such a hard role on the on the claims ratio, and since they are being postponed, I think that prices tend to stay in equilibrium. The only thing that is a big pressure, it has been for the last 10 years, is the inflation. So the cost of hospital care, the cost for the products that the suppliers offer, all of that has gone up, and the medical inflation runs around something like 15% in Brazil, and plans tend to readjust by 7 to 12% margin. So there's always a pressure of inflation on the plans. So prices, yes, tend to go up, but they're always more tied to inflation than to actually the pressure on claims. I think that overall the industry does a pretty good job on managing the processes. It's just that prices are going up of the things needed for medicine. The X-ray costs more, an image costs more, a blood test costs more, and that's not under control.
That's an important point, because around the world we're seeing a rally in the prices of a lot of basic commodities. And there are warnings that this will really feed through into the real economy and consumer prices. In Brazil already, we're seeing quite high inflation expectations. But in Brazil, we've also seen the central bank has raised the base interest rates from that historic low you discussed. Has that given you any support, or is it helping you offset things through your investments now that interest rates are higher, a bit higher?
Well, you see the interest rate now is running at 3.5% annual base. If we talk 12 months, like forward average, maybe a little bit more. But since we invest our float basically on government bonds tied to inflation, let's say we have a bond that pays 1.5 plus inflation, so that's already a lot closer to 5% in overall than the 3.5 interest rate. So our portfolio is managed through a long tail on a long curve. By doing so, we try to create some hedge for moments where the economy might go through different phases. So the inflation has not been presented as a big challenge, nor has the low interest rates impacted negatively our balance sheets. So we're okay, and as long as the government makes the correct policies, the technical policies, and adjust the interest rate to counter inflation as soon as possible. And inflation is not just in Brazil, like the whole world today is under this pressure, especially I guess because of the problems with logistics, which are pressuring commodities, it's pressuring food, it's pressuring energy, because all the customs everywhere is a little bit tighter due to the COVID and different customs needs. Anyway, we're optimistic about the way things are going, and observing what the US opening its borders while the vaccination is moving forward. We see Europe also undergoing intense vaccination programs. We see the world trying to collaborate, and if this goes on, we might have a 2022 a lot different and with a lot better perspectives than 2021 was.
So on that point, I wanted to ask you specifically about Brazil. It's been one of the countries worst affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, and infections and daily fatalities are still elevated. At the same time, though, the vaccination program is being rolled out quite slowly, and there's talk now of a third wave. What would another major outbreak of the disease in Brazil mean for your business? And also, what do you think it could mean for the wider economy here?
Well, Brazil is a continental country. So every day there will be a region with spiking numbers of contamination. At the same time, there will be regions where it's going to be under control. And so it's very hard to point like Brazil as an average of a COVID pandemic situation. We have areas which are bad. We also have areas which are good. At the same time, our vaccination program in Brazil has been top-notch for the past 2-3 decades. It's really good. We do the other SARS vaccines, we do the flu vaccines, and the program is very advanced. The key here is that we don't have all the vaccines that we needed to put the program in full scale. Because if that was a case, if we had all the vaccines, in 3 months, the situation would be under control. I talked to government officials, I talked to other businessmen, and everybody has the same clear idea. So now that the governments are organizing itself better, we expect that we are going to have more available vaccines for the population by the end of the year. So in very few months, it's possible that we can address the vaccination. What is frightening us at this point is the ghost of a third wave. That is a problem, because we are actually getting into the winter time in Brazil, where we have less rain, we have less humidity. You know how people tend to get a little bit more cold. So that might bring some extra challenges for our economy. But since we are in a movement in different regions with where things are going better, things are going well, I think that until now, things have, for at least the insurance market, has been manageable. And I don't think it would be a different scenario, even with a third wave. We might see some of the insurance lines having more claims, but at the same time, we're going to see some positive effects in other insurance lines. The good thing is that a company like Porto Seguro is very diversified. So we can navigate in different oceans, different conditions, and still manage to get some safe on the other side of the navigation.
One of the big economic impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic has been unemployment, people losing their jobs, or self-employed people not being able to go out and practice their activity. How do you think companies can help to keep the labour market afloat and prevent people from falling into destitution during this pandemic? And what has your company done?
Well, Michael, I think that, of course, government has the most power to address the issue, but I wouldn't take the private sector out of the equation. I think the private sector has a great responsibility and try to help address a situation that will help in the future to make a quicker comeback from the economy. Well, what have we done? So since the beginning, we were very keen on the employment. So I was contacted by a fellow businessman in Brazil that invited us to join a movement called Não Demita. Não Demita means don't fire. And where we would all commit to not fire anyone for 90 days during the beginning of the pandemic. So to try to create a safe harbor where people could at least organize themselves and try to postpone like a downturn on economic movements. So we joined that. We ended up keeping this program for about 5 months. And then we went back to business as usual, but very little people have been managed out or of the company, and we're also hiring a lot of people within. The second thing we've done is that we created a program called Meu Porto Seguro, that means My Safe Harbor, where we opened 10,000 employee spots, where we hired people to join Porto virtually, where they would, through online education, learn about the insurance market, learn about our products, and give them a perspective of a new job. This job was temporary. People will join us for 3 months, but the idea is that they are trained and they can change their career. So we don't know how at the end of the pandemic careers are going to change. Some of them might disappear. So the idea of giving people education and at the same time a salary was something that we found was a very good approach for the pandemic. So we have 12,500 employees. That's our base number, and we hired 10,000 people during the pandemic. And so like it's almost doubling our overhead just for a few months, of course, but that was a significant investment. And we believe that for our consumers, for our employees, and for our stakeholders, it's been an honor to be able to perform with this project and help the population in general. And again, we wish we could do more, but we're doing our part.
I'm really interested by that. You took on an extra 10,000 people. Was there really any work for them to do? Because you're almost doubling your workforce overnight. What did you get them to do?
Well, Michael, at first our idea was just to give the money, but then we started to think, well, but how do we feel when people just give us out money? Like, does this make us feel better? Does this make us feel proud? So why not create a movement where we're giving out education and we give them an easy job, even if it's just to post on Instagram or Facebook or talk between their friends about something interesting they've seen at Porto Seguro. And if they just do that, we might create a network of influencers or digital influencers, and we don't make people go outside. We try to keep them online, on the phone, on the email, WhatsApp platforms. But the idea was to experiment. you know, companies like Amway in the United States that have member get member marketing or multi-level marketing. So why not experiment with multi-level marketing digitally in the pandemic? So it's an experiment. It was interesting as a social experiment. It was important for the COVID pandemic, and we learned. We learned a lot. We learned more about SEO and Google. We learned more about online hiring. We learned more about online education. And I guess things that we learned are going to be carried out for the next generations. So we didn't make any money on sales with these 10,000 people, but we might have learned things that will impact positively in the future.
Was it a big cost to the company?
It was 10% of our profits.
One final thing I wanted to ask you about before we wrap up is to do with a trend that already existed in Brazil, but it's really accelerated during the pandemic. And it's around disruption in the financial sector. Because in Brazil, there's almost an oligopoly of the big high street banks who control most of the market. But in the past few years, we've seen the rise of digital challengers, fintechs, these new online-only or app-based banks. And they've been taking customers away, appealing to younger people and millennials a lot more. Are you worried about this happening in the insurance market and losing customers to new disruptors?
Yeah, I guess the competition is going to change in general. I'm not sure that what I consider today a competitor will be the same in the next 5 years. By assuming that competition will come from anywhere, we have to take a different approach on R&D, on user experience, to put the customer in the middle of our decisions instead of creating like a stream of products that might not be desired. And moreover, we are a developing country, so the cost is a very important aspect of any product development. So we need to keep our SG&A down. We need to reduce our cost of acquisition for customers. We have to extend our lifetime value, and this will make us competitive in the future. I don't think that we have to be afraid of fintech, of insurtech. We just have to evaluate every technology out there and see how we can address the same use of technology to our customers. So we are currently a top leading user of WhatsApp bots. We are the leader in online quotes. We have so we are a very progressive player. We enjoy using technology, and we're trying to experiment in every single platform. Currently, we did a very interesting JV with online pet ecosystem called Pet Love, and so we had a insurance for pets, for dogs and cats, and that was very hard to sell through brokers, and but through Pet Love, where they sell dog food, cat food, and they have like a whole ecosystem, we can now plug Porto Seguro and learn more about how these digital platforms operate. So this we might bring this education to other lines of industry, of our industry, and start creating our own insurtech. Why do we have to see other people do it? We can do it. So that's how we're playing the cards. And of course, you never know what's on the hand of your opponent on the other side of the table. But I think that we are well positioned. We have the cash to invest. Interesting times.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Bruno Garfinkel, Chairman of the Board at Porto Seguro.
Michael, it's an honor.